All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I anticipate we'll have a few more folks join us as we get going. But I'd first like to welcome everyone for joining us at tonight's event. My name is Kevin Lobdell, and I lead the college's alumni engagement team. And we're excited to have you join us this evening to hear a little bit more about the Mortenson Center and Global Engineering. So now, for the main reason that we've all gathered this evening, it's my pleasure to introduce Evan Thomas. Evan is currently the director of the Mortenson Center in Global Engineering and the Mortenson Endowed Chair in Global Engineering at the University of Colorado, Boulder. He's a tenured associate professor who's jointly appointed in the Civil, Environmental, and Architectural Engineering, as well as the SMED Aerospace Engineering Sciences Department. Also an affiliate faculty in Environmental and Occupational Health at the Colorado School of Public Health. And Evan has a PhD in Aerospace Engineering Sciences from CU Boulder, is a registered professional engineer, and has a master's in public health from the Oregon Health and Science University. Without further interruption from me, I'll turn it over to Evan, who will also introduce a couple of colleagues joining him from the Mortenson Center.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. My screen up and running?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. I'm looking forward to sharing with you the work that's being done in the Mortenson Center in Global Engineering and highlighting some of our exceptional colleagues, researchers, and students that are helping us get this work done. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Mortenson Center. Some of you who maybe haven't been around CU in the past couple of years might have remembered it as the Mortenson Center in Engineering for Developing Communities. We recently had a revisioning of our role as CU and as buffs and as engineers in contributing to global poverty reduction. And the term global engineering is a complementary field to global health and development economics. I'm going to share with you today a few examples of how we are practicing global engineering. A little bit about my background first. I'm an associate professor here at CU. I'm also an alumni of CU with my undergrad and PhD here at the University of Colorado in aerospace engineering, and I did a master's in public health at the Oregon Health and Science University. I got involved in academia, interested in academia as a kid. My grandparents were university professors at Simon Fraser University in Canada, and at CU as an undergraduate, when I was a freshman, I got involved with Engineers Without Borders USA. Engineers Without Borders was founded here at CU Boulder by Professor Bernard Amadei. It's now about 20,000 volunteers working in across 200 chapters in the United States and about 50 countries around the world. It all started here at CU, and it's how I got involved in global development. My early career was at NASA. My PhD research was in microgravity fluid management. So we did all my research on the Vomit Comet at NASA out of Houston, where the Vomit Comet flies parabolas, flies straight up in the air and then straight down. Well, not really, parabolas, of course. I know Donna Guerin's here, so she might be annoyed if I were to say straight up and down. And we're weightless for about 30 seconds at a time at the top of that parabola. And I was at NASA for about 6 years as an aerospace engineer before going to Portland, Oregon, and then coming back to CU in 2018. And then back here at CU, and my first kiddo there, Desmond, was born earlier this summer. This was my early day job at NASA on that airplane, designing and testing systems that could recycle water in space where we don't have the benefit of gravity. So an average person sweats about 1 liter of water a day, respires, we breathe out about 1 liter of water a day, and we urinate about a liter of water a day. And on the space shuttle, on the space station, we collect all of that wastewater and we recycle it back into clean drinking water every day. So this was some of the technologies that we developed and tested on the airplane for managing wastewater systems. And this is a system that I managed early in my career, the Total Organic Carbon Analyzer, which was an autonomous water quality tester for the space station. So looking down on the planet from the space station, you don't quite have this view. They're not far enough away, but this is actually a series of stitched pictures of everywhere on Earth on a cloud-free day. So this kind of looks like a graphic, but it's not a graphic. It's a series of stitched pictures. And of course, this projection looks familiar to us. Here's another way of looking at the planet. I'm sure all of you have seen this image before. We see electricity here, we see lights, and often your first instinct when seeing this picture is that it's showing where people live. It really shows where rich people live. You can see us in the United States and Europe. That's the Nile lit up in North Africa, and India and China outlined. But there are still 3 billion people in the world who don't have electricity and use firewood for their daily energy needs. And those people live here. Still today in 2021, we have almost half the world's population living on less than $5.50 a day, about half the world's population using firewood for daily energy needs. About 2 billion people don't have safe sanitation. And still today, about 1 billion people globally don't have access to safe drinking water. And these conditions, these environmental health conditions, contribute to some of the leading causes of illness and death globally still today. Respiratory disease is the #1 killer globally. About 5 million people die every year from respiratory disease. About 3 million of them are children under the age of 5. And a large fraction of that respiratory illness is associated with indoor and outdoor cooking. We also have about 5 million children that die every year from diarrhea, also associated with dirty water and sanitation. And as climate change is happening, it's impacting the most vulnerable directly and early. The earliest effect of climate change is changing rainfall patterns. Wet places are getting wetter. So a place like Rwanda that's wet and mountainous is seeing an increase in the severity and frequency of floods. A dry place like northern Kenya or Ethiopia is seeing drought happen almost every year now instead of every 10 or 15 years. And in both cases, these changing rainfall patterns impact food security, crop failure, disease incidence, and political and physical insecurity as well. This is Rwanda. I've personally been working in Rwanda since about 2003, so almost 18 years now, starting with Engineers Without Borders here at CU and scaling to several nationwide programs that we've been part of over the past few years. This is a pretty typical cooking environment in Rwanda using firewood fuels. And you can see the emissions from this outdoor cook stove. One of our research areas is around how do we encourage and incentivize and monitor clean cooking behaviors? How do we get people to switch to more clean cook stoves, which is partly about behavior, but it's also about economics. It's also about product costs. It's also about professionalization of services. And how can we use monitoring technologies to see if these projects are working? This is a device developed by one of our STAR PhD students, Chantal Iribagiza, designed to monitor indoor and outdoor air pollution associated with these kinds of cook stoves. So this is basically a really fancy smoke alarm. The white box in the upper right-hand corner is monitoring particulate matter that are emissions from stoves. And in the child's lungs is showing basically a barometer of the air quality. And after it exceeds a certain limit, it plays an alarm. It's actually a recording of Rwandan drums as a reminder to try to get people to switch to clean cooking fuels. And Chantal has been developing and testing this technology over the past few years as part of a very large scale National Institutes of Health and Gates Foundation study that's been going on in Rwanda. Chantal is also an expert in rural water services, in particular in Rwanda and other places in East and Central Africa. This is a hand pump. Hundreds of millions of people still get their water from these kinds of hand pumps every year, but about half of them are broken at any given time, and about half of the functional hand pumps are producing fecally contaminated drinking water. So a hand pump, both actually as well as figuratively, is the focus of a lot of research done at the Mortenson Center. We have a $15 million 5-year contract from USAID, led by two of our associate directors, Carl Linden and Amy Javernick-Will, that's trying to study these types of water supply systems to figure out how we can sustain basic water and sanitation services. This is one of those broken hand pumps. Now, an engineer's instinct might be, I can fix that. I can make a better hand pump. And you're all engineers. So that might be your instinct. it's not really the hardware itself that's the problem. It's the entire system around basic water services that ultimately lead to that hand pump breaking. We've used sensors, satellite and cellular connected sensors across a variety of different applications, including hand pumps, over the past almost 10 years now to try to improve the monitoring as well as use the data to improve maintenance of things like hand pumps. This is also Chantal from a few years ago now, before she was a PhD student with us, when she was an engineer for Living Water International and responsible for maintaining these kind of pumps. So that's one of our sensors in Chantal's hand. She installed these sensors on hundreds of hand pumps across Rwanda, and we use that data to try to figure out improved ways of maintaining water access, where the sensor itself would tell you if a pump was broken. And Chantal could see that on a dashboard on her computer screen in Kigali and go out and fix the pump. And we saw a dramatic impact on pump functionality. Before we ran the study in the baseline, when a pump broke, it was broken for about 200 days, that big red bar on the left. And on average, about 50% of pumps were working at any given time. Using our sensor data, we got that maintenance interval down to 20 days, so an order of magnitude improvement in repair time, and overall functionality to above 90%. So we've taken some of these concepts and we've brought them to scale. We're now working across East Africa and deploying our Drought Resilience Impact Platform, DRIP, which was a finalist for the MacArthur 100 and Change competition this past year. Our goal is to reduce and ultimately end drought emergencies in East Africa. Now, these are much bigger systems. These are big, deep borehole systems that are being monitored with our sensors. And part of this research is led by another STAR PhD student, Dennis Machara, shown here. Dennis would have been joining us tonight, but he lives in Nairobi and he works full-time in Nairobi, so it's a little late for him. But Dennis is a full-time geospatial specialist helping to run this project funded by NASA and USAID, while also a PhD student here at CU. These are the type of systems that we're monitoring. These are big, deep borehole systems, about 100 meters deep, and they're serving water to about 5,000 people on average. People and livestock use this water during drought. So during the wet seasons, people will get surface water and use it. During the dry seasons, people and their livestock will migrate to these groundwater pumps. And if they can access groundwater, that's sufficient. However, often these pumps are broken in the middle of peak drought. About 40% of these pumps in northern Kenya are broken during peak drought, which can lead to a drought emergency. That can lead to the death of livestock, displacement of people, political insecurity, and food insecurity. We've been running an impact evaluation over the past few years of our work, and USAID showed that we increased pump runtime by about 15% overall. Now, that's not quite the dramatic effect that we had in Rwanda, but it's a very positive indicator that we're able to improve access to water services. And we did that without any additional funding. So it was just the information that we're generating from these sensor systems that was able to be available to the folks that were responsible for maintaining the pumps, and they could go out there and do something about it. I'm going to show you a quick video now of this work in action.
Northern Kenya is really characterized by frequent droughts, which are becoming severe every 2 to 3 years. We have a lot of millions of Kenyans who are affected in terms of food insecurity, high malnutrition rates. The women are walking longer distances. We have seen borehole water levels going down.
What we see in Kenya is experienced across the arid Horn of Africa. There's over 1 billion people in the world who lack access to clean drinking water even today. Usually, humanitarian relief comes in when the emergency has already occurred, costing billions of dollars. We can end these drought emergencies. The University of Colorado Boulder is combining our technical leadership with actions taken by the Millennium Water Alliance, national governments, and local communities in Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia. Our solution is DRIP, the Drought Resilience Impact Platform. DRIP will monitor water security, create actionable drought forecasts, and incentivize repairs to ensure that when the rains fail, water access is secure and costly drought emergencies are prevented.
We are already monitoring millions of people's water supplies. We can guarantee water security for tens of millions of people in spite of recurrent drought.
Together, we are ending drought emergencies.
So this is our current coverage. We're monitoring about 3 million people's water supplies continuously today across Ethiopia and Kenya. And we've been expanding this work now in Nigeria and Sierra Leone and soon the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We're also doing this work in the United States. We have a project with the Moore Foundation and partnerships with the Ute Mountain Ute tribe in Southwest Colorado, as well as more recently the Navajo Nation, to help monitor water conservation and water security on the Ute Mountain Ute and on the Navajo Reservation. Now, back to a rainy place. This is Rwanda, where, as I mentioned earlier, rainfall has been increasing in volume and frequency, and floods have been isolating communities. So when a flood hits Rwanda, villages can be isolated from schools and hospitals and markets and from work and, of course, from healthcare facilities. This organization, Bridges to Prosperity, installs pedestrian footbridges across Rwanda to try to connect these isolated communities so that they're no longer isolated during floods. Bridges to Prosperity is led by two alumni of the Mortenson Center, Avery Bang and Christina Barstow, who are taking this work to scale. They're installing about 300 of these footbridges in partnership with the Rwandan government over the next few years. And we at the Mortenson Center have been contracted by USAID to study the impact of these bridges. So we're running an experimental impact evaluation looking at the economic, health, and educational benefits attributable to these bridges. This research is led by our managing director, Dr. Laura McDonald, and Laura is here with us this evening along with Chantal. And some of you will get to meet Laura and Chantal in breakout rooms later to learn more about this research. Here's a few examples of our data collection. This is one of our BSMS recent graduates, Sally Gerster, who did her field practicum in Rwanda, installing cameras on these footbridges so that we could record when people are using the bridges. I know Sally is here tonight and is out in the workforce now, but the research that she's done, we're continuing to implement within this study. We also have a number of students that are involved in volunteer activities. Engineers in Action helps build these types of pedestrian footbridges, and Engineers Without Borders, of course, the founding chapter here at CU, has over 100 students working in 4 countries around the world. And we have amazing students like our undergraduate, Paula Perez, who's leading some of these projects globally. Our graduate students also organize our Colorado Wash Symposium, which is coming up just next week. You're all invited. It's free. It's entirely online, of course, this year. It's March 11th and 12th. And Ayush Shahi, another one of our star PhD students, is the student lead this year. So how do we put this together? What is global engineering, and what is the role of engineers in contributing to global poverty reduction? Global engineering is everything from standards development. How good does a water filter need to be? How clean does air quality need to be from a cook stove? System science, looking at the entire system behind something like a water service and not just the pump by itself. Impact evaluation, generating experimental and quasi-experimental data on what works and, equally importantly, what doesn't work. Instrumentation and remote sensing, or more broadly, data. We do a lot of work with sensors and satellite-based remote sensing to try to generate data products that are actionable by anybody from a community up to a donor. Pay for performance contracting. This might seem a little bit obscure, but one of the big challenges in global development today is that there's a lot of money sloshing around, and yet very little impact or progress is made in certain sectors in certain regions. Can we have better contracting that hold donors accountable to the actual outcomes that are the intent of the projects and the money? Structures and settlements, we have a lot of research in the center around everything from a footbridge to safe housing in refugee camps. Environmental health, of course, the core of a lot of global health work, water and air quality and safe sanitation. And then, of course, education. Our program has about 200 undergraduates either taking courses with us all the way up to earning our global engineering minor. We have 70 graduate students every year earning either our graduate certificate in global engineering or our professional master's in global engineering. And we work in about 20 countries around the world. And the Mortenson Center Research and Practice has impact beyond CU. This is the Engineering for Sustainable Development report that UNESCO published earlier today. Today is World Engineering Day. And this is the second ever UNESCO engineering report. The first one was in 2010. And Bernard Amadei, the founder of the Mortenson Center and Engineers Without Borders, and I are the co-editors and co-authors of this report, trying to put forward a vision of how engineers can help address the Sustainable Development Goals. So just in conclusion, these are the kind of pictures that motivate our work, but pictures aren't really telling the whole story. A lot of development isn't necessarily tied to continuous impact, to improved justice, to greater equity, to addressing or at least talking about, at minimum, the historic drivers that perpetuate poverty. Poverty is not an accident. Poverty is a constructed condition that has echoes from slavery and colonialism all the way through today to climate change. And as engineers, we have to talk about these things, and we have to be aware of these things and understand how our engineering can help address the causes of poverty and not just the symptoms of poverty. So that's the quick presentation, and we're going to take a couple questions in this group setting and then go into some breakouts so you can learn more from me and Laura and Chantal.
All right, thank you, Evan, for that great overview. And so, as mentioned, please feel free to throw some questions into the chat, and we will send them over to Evan. Laura got us started by putting one in that we received through registration. Evan, how does the Mortenson Center compare to other universities' efforts in global engineering?
Yeah, so there's a lot of other universities that have been thinking about this question. What does it mean for engineers and engineering students to be engaged globally? The Mortenson Center was the vanguard. EWB was founded 20 years ago. The Mortenson Center was founded 10 years ago. But now there's about 40 universities in the United States that have graduate level programs, either a couple classes all the way through to a degree. Some programs focus on global health. Other programs focus on product design. Other programs might focus on impact evaluation. We all came together just 2 weeks ago with support from the National Science Foundation to try to develop common learning objectives. So we had 40 universities represented. USAID was there, the Gates Foundation was there, the Mortenson family was there. Of course, we're endowed by the Mortenson family and the Mortenson construction firm. Mort was an alumni of our department here at CU. And we all came together and developed a consensus around what engineers need to know. And as you can imagine, it was a mix of breadth. We need to know something about health. We need to know something about history. We need to know something about economics, as well as depth. What are the specific technical tools that are used now in global development that you're not taught necessarily in your undergraduate curriculum? I also want to just mention we have several alumni on the call. We have Sally Gerster here, who you saw a picture of her in her work in Rwanda, and Kathy Junglin, who's also an alumni and an employee of Tetra Tech, who did her practicum in Kenya on sanitation related research.
All right. I don't see any others in the chat, but I will go to a different one that was submitted through registration. Evan, what are 3 key messages you wish the general public in the US and or globally knew about the work that you and the Mortenson Center are doing?
So I think, more broadly than just the Mortenson Center, our curriculum in the past few years has really evolved to considering these causes of poverty that I mentioned earlier. The development sector for a long time was very technocratic. It was, okay, a village doesn't have clean water. We're going to come in and put in some water pumps, put in a chlorination system, and that, is hopefully sufficient. But there's a reason why that village didn't have clean water before we showed up, whether or not it's Engineers Without Borders or all the way up to the World Bank. It's not just a continuum of history. It's because these countries have suffered from all of these other structural issues that that persist today. And one of the most obvious ones is that climate change is caused by those countries that are using energy and emitting carbon, and it's impacting the countries that are not using energy and are not emitting carbon. And the impacts are being felt daily, not decadally, not on a century scale, but right now. And so we need to talk about that more. As engineers, we sometimes are afraid of what might feel like a political issue, but these are not political issues. These are issues of health and equity and justice.
All right, thank you. Putting another call out if anyone who's live with us has any questions for Evan. Otherwise, Aaron, if you're ready, we can transition into the breakout room so we have a little bit more time in there.
Perfect. All right, I will go ahead and open those breakout rooms now. We'll have them open for about 20, 25-ish minutes, and then we'll come back together as a group and close it out. All right, we will
Thanks,
see you
Aaron.
back there.